I'm Scott Fisher, recording here in New York. The pace of technology, especially in education, demands constant evolution. The real challenge for today's IT leaders isn't just adopting new tech, but managing the risk that comes with it. We're talking about the critical need for innovation in how we manage and govern our cloud environments. It's a space where innovators must solve the problem of achieving transformative growth while securing increasingly complex data in platforms like Google Workspace. My guest today is a proven visionary who helps organizations navigate this. He's the guy people call when they realize their expensive security stack isn't actually telling them what they need to know. Dwayne Johnson is here to talk through this with us. He is the director of EdTech Solutions at PC University, a GatLab's partner. And before we get started, yes, he is the Dwayne, not the Rock Johnson. Dwayne has been at the center of the reseller and partner world with PC University for 15 years, launching groundbreaking initiatives for client success. Dwayne, it's good to see you.
Likewise, Scott. It's great to be here.
Appreciate your time today. So let's jump right in with the first question. As a visionary in EdTech, how do you separate a truly transformative idea from just a passing tech trend?
Well, obviously, PC University, I just want to say we focus on helping schools create engaging, secure, and future-ready learning environments. So those tech trends, they come and go. But the strong answer to that is that staffing shortage, that cybersecurity threat. One of the biggest challenges today is that schools, their technology environments have become incredibly complex, Scott. Complex because of a lot of trends and not necessarily the necessities that are aligned with their pedagogy. So districts are managing thousands of users, devices, permissions, shared files, security, risk, all kinds of stuff with limited staff. And so those trends are not what we propose. Unlike others, PC University for the past 30 years, we are all about the outcomes. We're solution providers. So we do not provide what's popular or what's popping. We provide exactly what is necessary, has sustainability, durability, and most importantly, it has to improve teacher performance and get this, student outcomes. So I hope that answers that question for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're 100% right. I mean, former life for me was as a school tech director for many, many years. And, all those challenges that you mentioned are 100% spot on, So for you guys, how do you proactively invest in the next wave of innovation then, and not just simply reacting to what the customer's demand is, like, sort of being ahead of the curve, if you will?
One of the things that keep us ahead of the curve is keeping up with the ever-changing technologies. We work with strategic manufacturers in the market that not only has the latest innovation, but they have a strong 3, 5, 10-year plan. And the reason why we stay hand in hand with them at factory level is because it has to provide school efficiencies, right? It has to provide, these are our rubrics. Obviously, educators have their rubrics, but as a value-added reseller and solution provider for education, it's important for us to have our rubric in order to better serve our educators. And that is efficiency, teacher support, personalized learning, administrative automation, ethical AI discussions in this world of AI that everyone's speaking about, but it has to be ethical. And last but not least is future, workforce preparation. So if the product that is being launched is aligned with those rubrics, then we can bring it to the schools for onboarding or launching for evaluation and piloting.
Right. But it's important, I think, for you and your team to be viewed as innovators, okay? Or trusted consultants and not just people that are selling them a license to a particular package, right? So how do you shift that culture internally for you guys so that you are playing that role where you are seen as more of an innovator or a trusted consultant?
Oh, okay, understand. I mean, that's a great question. So we shifted by first and foremost, listening to the pain points of our customers. So for example, right now we're seeing districts heavily focused on modernization. Okay, so not just replacing old technology, old licenses, and just looking for the latest thing that's on contract, but rethinking learning spaces entirely, rethinking their networks also entirely. There's a huge growth, for example, in STEM, esports, immersive learning, broadcasting. Sure. At the same time, AI-ready classrooms. And this AI-ready classroom and cybersecurity vertical that has recently launched and is really surging throughout K-12 is going to have a dynamic impact on their infrastructure as well as their security risk. Districts want solutions that engage students while also being manageable and secure from an IT perspective. So we're forward thinking, and we also have to be proactive, knowing that the equipment and solutions that they're building up right now, especially in the summer, they're going to really require solutions that manage that workspace, that provides simplicity as well as security.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm sure when you've tried to implement some sort of some new initiative, right? You've probably encountered some other internal hurdles that you had to sort of innovate your way around. Can you talk about anything that you've experienced with regard to that?
Oh man, I don't even know how to start with that because
Loaded question.
that's a loaded question, right? Because we encountered lots of problems. And obviously every school district has a different culture of their environment. One hurdle we sometimes encounter is change management. As I think that's one of the biggest hurdles, honestly. We see less of a change management in the independent schools. But
Okay.
the large public schools, there seems to be a lot of change as well. For example, you'll have a science teacher now become the technology director. I mean, really. So even when technology is powerful, adoption takes time. And we love our educators. And interestingly enough, I find that some of the math and science teachers that shift into a role of technology do actually even greater. But educators are, already, balancing enormous responsibilities. You walk into any school district. So introducing new systems, as you're mentioning, it requires really thoughtful training. It doesn't matter from a PC University standpoint. What makes us, I believe, successful and who we are for the past 30 years. And just a little drop in the nugget for Jeffrey Miller because we just celebrated 30th on May 1st this year.
I
What
saw
makes us
that.
extremely
That's incredible.
popular,
30 years
right?
is a long time.
30 years is a long time. What makes us popular and successful, I truly believe, is that we're not box movers. We're solution providers, but not just solution providers, well thought of, right? Educators have enough on their plate. So they really appreciate the fact that we do the due diligence and not just bring in a solution, but one that we've already vetted ourselves. And we propose it because we know that their pain points in the culture of their environments. So introducing new systems require thoughtful training, ongoing support, not just drop it and leave it, but ongoing and clear instructional value. Okay, so we've learned that successful implementation starts with people first, technology second.
Right. But you need to have a way to measure success, right? So let's put aside the revenue generation
Sure.
aspect of things, right? What do you think of as the points that prove that whatever the initiative is it's been a true success?
I mean, that's the easiest way, obviously, is the student outcomes, teacher adoption, right? When you see the implementation across the board, not just from the tech savvy, but across the board, when it's really the playing field has been leveled, operational efficiencies. Now you know it's working. That's success. Security, compliance, long-term impact, success. And what happens when you have that success, and that's why it's so important to have that ongoing support and training to get all of these combinations of success, is because not only do they see the value of our relationship, they see the value of that product that we're selling, and they want not only to keep it for sustainability and longevity, but they also want to get everything that it comes with, the modules, for example.
Yeah. No doubt about that. I'm just thinking about all that goes into it, and in terms of from a end user perspective, what success means, and you hit all the points there in terms of the student success and being able to have longevity with what you're doing, because that's really important. Because today, well, not just today, but always, you've mentioned PC University been around forever, 30 years or what have you. You've been in the business a while. I was in the business a while. There's all this hype about the latest and greatest tech and the newest thing that's shiny and sparkly. So
Sure.
from your perspective, in terms of going back to that longevity and being so important to the schools and so forth. What EdTech has actually delivered on its promise, and what do you think sort of been overhyped in the classroom? Let's just focus on the past few years, maybe even just AI or what have you.
That's a really good question, right? Because there's one thing you don't want to do as an educator is to not maximize the use of your technology that you purchased. And so one of the biggest purchases across the board, regardless of funding availability, started way back with the smart bond funding. And
Right.
that is all schools getting rid of those projectors and putting up panels. And without mentioning the brands, the mere fact is that, schools were expecting something and the outcome was not as they expected. And the reason why, training, dropping the box after installation, if we never showed up, the training portion of that is almost as critical as the technology itself. So in that, we measure, success by outcomes, getting back to that success, right? Not just the installation. Technology is only successful if it's actually improving teacher learning, operational efficiency, and overall experience for, educators and students. So for us, success, means high adoption, right? High adoption rates. You're not only utilizing it for the fundamentals, but you're digging down into it. Stronger engagement, fewer operational challenges, right? Improved visibility. And there are so many different ways that Director of Technologies can actually manage using remote access, okay, or the RUI. And ultimately, success is helping districts, create environments where both the student and the teachers can thrive. This kind of correlates to the solutions with software as well, because as we recently started diving deeply into cybersecurity and video surveillance and thinking about success in that portion. In education, success isn't measured by how much technology is purchased. It's actually, from a Google Workspace, for example, and cybersecurity perspective, when they're looking at that, success is often measured through visibility. Because if they can't see it, okay, it's measured by risk reduction. Okay, it's measured by automation, because automation actually allows them to free up time to be more effective elsewhere. And it's measured by response time, because if an IT team can identify issues faster, manage permissions more efficiently, reduce manual workload and, proactively protect students and staff, that is a major win. Even if my Mets never win another playoff again, but that's a major win, right? So with AI and automation, success is measured by how much time we're giving back to educators. And that's really what it's about, because with the teacher shortages that are constantly taking place, if automation reduces repetitive administration work and allows, educators to focus on more instructions and student engagements, then the technology is delivering real value. And that is the kind of sessions and seminars that they're asking for, at these trade shows, at EdTech seminars. I've been to a lot of AIs, but no one is speaking on this. It sounds great, but no one has the success stories that the educators are looking for. And that's really what they're looking for. They're looking for more time back.
Yeah, so I guess that sort of leads into where I wanted to go next in terms of value propositions, right? So I think you're kind of explaining this, that the definition of value in ed tech has actually changed, right? Especially when we're talking about the enhancements for data privacy, right?
Yes, absolutely. Our value proposition constantly changes. Obviously, 30 years is not 30 days. But, our value proposition, for example, is that we help schools simplify and modernize, thank you, pretty much education technology through our consultative partnership approach. We don't just provide products. We help districts secure, engage, okay, future ready. And that's the thing, it has to be future ready,
Right.
because they cannot purchase today and it only answers a problem this year. So yes, that's a huge difference. And I think GAT Labs is aligned with that vision, because one of the biggest value propositions we bring is helping districts gain that visibility, efficiency, once again, and confidence. And that's huge across their technology ecosystem. They have to have that confidence and assurance. Otherwise, there's going to be some skepticism.
Yeah, and it goes back to also what you were mentioning before about improving efficiencies. Everybody I talk to in schools these days, and certainly when I was in the schools for years, the staffing numbers for the technology team don't always align with the amount of technology they're expected to support in the schools. So anytime we can provide a small technology team with tools, either software or hardware, but let's talk
Hmm.
software for the moment, that can help them streamline what they need to do, can set, automatic notifications or alerts or trigger certain events automatically without the tech staff having to constantly be monitoring or be sitting in front of their screen. They can actually be out working with teachers, working with students, but still get the alerts and things like that. I think that's what's really valuable at this point in time, is being able to provide those efficiencies and and do it in a cost effective way, of course, but in a non-intrusive way. We're not looking to take away jobs. We're actually looking to make the jobs better for the people that have them.
Absolutely. Once again, it goes back to that simplicity, and I think that your solution is great. One of our, I would say, major hardware equipments that we sell is actually successful and leading market share, not necessarily because of all the features, but because of the simplicity. Once again, educators, regardless if you're a math teacher, security desk clerk, their jobs are overwhelming. The
Mhm.
last time you've been into a New York City school, you'll know how overwhelming it is. And so anything we can do to help lighten their load while providing that assurance, that efficiency, that accuracy, basically that simplicity, is not only going to establish a stronger relationship, but is also going to provide them with an automated process that adapts to their ecosystem and simplifies their workflow.
Yeah. You mentioned New York City schools. I was on a call recently with someone from one of the schools, and you always want to get some background on what's their breakdown, the technology they're using, what they're trying to support. Okay, and tell
Right.
me a little bit about your staff. And they
Right.
go, "You're looking at it. I'm it. I am the staff." So it's always scary,
Yeah.
because schools not, and I'm not just limiting this to New York City. I mean, this is worldwide. We're seeing this. Schools invest a tremendous amount of money in hardware and software, okay?
Yes.
Technology in general. But they missed two pieces, like you pointed out. They missed the training component, so that if you're not training people to adequately use what you've given them, you just give them this tool and drop it on their desk, so to speak, and walk away. They don't know how to use it. They're never going to use it. So it's important to have, um, onboarding or training to begin with, and
Yes.
also ongoing support, and know that, if they have a question or problem, there's somebody that's going to be able to help them in a reasonable amount of time, not, someday down the road, we'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. So that's a big part of it, is the training piece, but it's also important that you have a reasonable number of people to support all of that technology that you're putting in. If you put in all this technology and you're expecting one person to do it all, there's just no possible way they're going to do it effectively or efficiently. And you end up spending money on things that you're not actually using because you don't have the manpower to actually get the full use of it. So I think that's what people like you come in, service providers, things like that you can help them with the right tool for the right size of the organization, and give them
Yes.
everything you can to help them do or have the best chance of being successful in their role.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah.
Um, you just spoke about that's pretty much our core, right? We're not transactional, we're transformational. We focus on outcomes, not just equipment. So yes, technology should simplify education, not complicate it.
Yeah, I agree completely. And there's always these obstacles when you're trying to do something new. You mentioned earlier about trying to influence some change and so forth. And there's unfortunately still that mindset of, well, we've always done it this way kind of thing, and they're very reluctant to change, and change can be hard. There's some obstacles for doing that, but um, there's got to be some sort of ratio, right? An acceptable risk to reward ratio when you're advocating for a massive technology or behavioral shift, right?
Sure.
How do you see that?
Well, that's a very good question. Listen, I'm sales, right? But I'm technology and I'm relational. I want to win all the time. But But this is kind of a philosophical, kind of business oriented question that you threw at me there, Scott. But it's the best approach is to kind of frame that around like, obviously customers come first. All right. Customer outcome definitely comes first. That ratio would have, long-term partnership, trust, obviously. So at PC University, we believe that reward naturally, follows the success of our customers. So once our customers are successful, the reward comes. Our philosophy has always been, if schools succeed operationally, instructionally, strategically, then guess what? We succeed as a company. So our ratio of success to reward is heavily weighted kind of towards creating value first, if that makes any sense. So that
Sure.
value proposition has to come first, not to us. And I love being a reseller because, I've been in the manufacturing side of it for pretty much all my life before going into EdTech. And from a manufacturer standpoint, a lot of times you learn who really dictates the market. Is it the consumer or is it the manufacturer? And many times it's actually the manufacturers when it really should be the consumer. So what we're doing from a EdTech standpoint is we're really listening to the pain points of our teachers, our educators. And that's why, their success is our success.
Yeah. If you're not listening to your customer, if you're not providing a solution, the bells and whistles don't matter. It has to be, how can you help them solve, like you said, a particular pain point or a use case? Many of the schools these days are using Google Workspace for education. They're trying to manage it. They're trying to secure it. But you run into a problem where some of these people who maybe aren't at the tech level, but maybe above them, they kind of come to the table with the mindset that, whatever the out-of-box security that's built into Google Workspace is, that should be enough. And there shouldn't be a need to have, any additional tools to help people, to help the tech team or to help the others in the school to secure or to successfully manage that Google Workspace when it comes to, data loss protection, when it comes to the sharing of personally identifiable information or sharing of confidential information. Maybe it's not personally identifiable, but it's information that shouldn't be put out there in the world, or having access to sites or seeing things or accessing things that the kids shouldn't be accessing, So how do you respond to that when you run into those people that are just of this mindset that, look, we bought Google. We shouldn't need to have anything else?
That's a very good question. Let me back up by first saying one thing we've learned is that trust and visibility are everything in education technology, right? When districts feel confident that their environment are secured, manageable, scalable, it creates stronger partnerships and long-term success for everyone involved. So, if the school actually says, that their Google Workspace is sufficient enough, that's going to be a difference. I don't think I've ever ran into, honestly, a school that actually said that their Google Workspace is sufficient enough. But, and one of the reasons why I don't think I've ran into that is because there's always, like cybersecurity, there's always a different module or different add-on to the EDR that you can do to improve. So listening to the pain points of the customers is extremely important, that then we can obviously bring in a solution such as GAT Labs, right? But it's an excellent question that you mentioned because it allows us to position the importance of governance, right? Visibility, security, and management like GAT Labs. And so if we did run into that, obviously Google Workspace is an incredible, powerful platform.
Sure.
We sell the license constantly. It's a strong platform, for education, and it has transformed collaboration, communication and accessibility in schools. However, if the question did arise, as I would say, as districts grow, which they are, and digital environments become more complex, many schools realize that, honestly, they need additional layers of visibility, governance, automation, and security to fully manage and protect their environment effectively. And these IT directors, when they're being open and honest, they want to be proactive and not reactive. And that's a key in their role.
Yeah, I think when you get down to the directors of IT, when you get down to the system administrators and the hands-on day-to-day tech people, they get it. They get that the tools that come with Google might be limited. It's a great product, not knocking the product, but it doesn't go far enough. So what I was really referring to is sometimes you get people that are overseeing or responsible for the technology department at a higher level who provide the budget and so forth that don't really get the full picture. They don't understand, well, wait a minute, we just spent all this money with PC University for, thousands of licenses for all of our students and staff in the school. Now you're telling me we need to spend more money for something else. So those are the people I'm talking about that it's difficult trying to get that point across to. But I think what our experience has been, and certainly my experience as a former tech director was, unfortunately, it takes one small incident or problem to be able to make the case, listen, this is why we need to have better tools for monitoring and for keeping track of things and trying to keep people safe, because look at what just happened because we don't have it.
Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, 100%.
Yeah. So, this is where we start talking about the difference between, just a monitoring a system or, actually governing it, right? Where, it's
Mhm.
not just seeing what's happening, but taking control of what's going on in your environment and making sure that basically you're calling the shots. And that's where these extra tools come in, where you get to say, look, this is not acceptable, or this is acceptable, or I want this to happen, but I don't want to let, things like this happen. Just take for a case, you might have a rogue technician who for whatever reason is bored and wants to start looking through everybody's emails or files and see what's going on, right?
Right.
You can't have that. And that's where you need these extra tool sets and things like that, where you can put a layer of security in there where you can go, no, if someone's going to need to access secure or confidential information, we're going to do this in an organized approach. And they're going to have to let somebody else know that this is what they're doing and why they're doing it. And that other person has to have the authority to give them that ability to see what they need for the specific purpose and for a limited amount of time. And you also need to have the accountability in terms of having a system in place where anybody at any point in time can go back and review the logs to make sure that if something like that did happen, they're aware of it, or they understand who did it and why.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So do you have any insight into, when auditing a new domain, or when first talking about security, if you will, with schools and the people in the schools, any thoughts on like maybe the biggest blind spot that usually surprises an IT director when you start working with them, maybe something you bring to their attention that they weren't aware of before?
I mean, you actually mentioned one of the biggest issues, right? Because more security incidences are not always external attacks. And I think that's what really came up over the years. Sometimes they're internal misuse, as you mentioned with the example of a rogue employee, right? Accidental oversharing. We've ran into that, and they were not prepared for that. They're prepared for someone trying to hack and phishing issues and trying to hijack systems and get money out of it. But they're finding excessive permissions, right?
Yeah.
And policy gaps. Okay, so visibility helps you understand what's happening, and it controls, and helps you manage, risk responsibility. So now they're seeing the benefits of that. But yes, those were some of the key things that we saw.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things, of course, is like you're saying, is people having access to information that maybe the school wasn't even aware of. We encounter a lot of times where people are sharing things out publicly, making it available to the public, and maybe that's intentional. Maybe it's a teacher sharing a particular document so that the parents can see it. So they need to make it public so it can go out on the website. But oftentimes we see people are sharing things publicly, and they meant to do it either temporarily or they didn't mean to do it at all. They weren't aware of it. So they need a tool, they need a solution that's going to help them quickly ascertain, hey, who has access to my information, and not only see it, but be able to shut it down quickly. If I'm sharing this file out to the public and I shouldn't be, they need a tool that they can quickly turn that off. They need a tool that, if they get some phishing email or something like that, and all of a sudden everybody's inbox is filling up with it, They need a tool that the administrators can quickly shut it down. They can identify what the email is that was being sent. They can see who the email was sent to, and they can quickly retrieve that email, whether they've read it or not, to sort of, shut it down. Because we see these outside phishing incidents, maybe everybody gets notified that the superintendent was feeling particularly generous today and everybody's getting free Starbucks, and a lot of people
Right.
fall for that. Or
Right.
worse, you get, somebody internally sending nasty emails, whether it's students or, I hate to say it, sometimes staff to other people that, or just inappropriate things that shouldn't be sent. It's great to have a tool like that you can pull it back quickly, or to have a tool when a parent calls up and says, listen, the kids are really smart now and you guys have locked them out of using chat, but they figured out that they can use a Google Doc and share it amongst all their friends and just use it as a chat mechanism where they're, everybody's typing back and forth on it, or my son was exposed to something today through, somebody shared a file with him. It was horrible. Well, you can go in there and see with the right tools and say, hold on a minute. Yes, this did happen, but your son actually didn't receive it. They probably heard word of it from somebody else. We can show you exactly who actually received this shared file, or at the very least, we can shut it down. We can say, yes, it is a shared file. The students are being creative, but we've removed access so that none of them can do that anymore. And that's the real value in these add-ons to the Google Workspace that we're talking about, right?
I love that. And I love the way you just explained kind of monitoring and controlling. And it kind of just reminds me, I heard someone mention something that I actually captured to explain to anyone asking the difference, right? And I always say monitoring is like having, security cameras in a building. But control is having locks, access badge, right? Alarms and policies that determine who can enter certain rooms, in the first place. And so those are two different things that you have to have both, because controls are just as important as monitoring.
Yeah, absolutely. It's to see it and not have any ability to do anything about it would just be completely frustrating and pointless. It's like I don't know, watching something outside your window happen and you have no control to do anything about it. Just sit there and be a helpless bystander would be very frustrating as a tech person in the schools, so to speak. So yeah, it's very important to have both, the ability to monitor things and also the ability to control things,
Indeed.
Um, so, AI is all the rage these days, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
using AI, and
Yes.
when we talk about innovation, everybody thinks AI is being innovative, or using AI as being innovative, and you probably know better than that as I do that, just because something is labeled AI or because something says it's utilizing AI doesn't really make it innovative in any way, or it isn't really an innovative solution. It's just maybe a different approach, or maybe I love these companies that they haven't really changed what they're doing, but they slap the word AI on it to make it look. It kind of reminds me. It's a strange example, but a lot of people these days are gluten intolerant or can't handle gluten in their diet, so these companies now are throwing these big labels on their packages that say, gluten free. They've always been gluten free. It's that they
Right.
didn't change anything about the product. There's no added anything to the product. They've just simply decided that we're going to capitalize on using the label gluten free because we've always been gluten free. It reminds me a lot of these tech companies that some of them haven't changed what they're doing. They just
Right.
simply decided to jump on board with it, So one of the things that happens though, when you start talking about AI and this big boom and all of that is you need to start thinking about, the data loss prevention methods that are being used, and are the traditional methods that you've used historically,
Mhm.
are they really adequate for dealing with the use of AI in this day and age? And what are you seeing from your perspective on that?
I mean, AI is everywhere. It's always been similar to the advertisement of gluten. It's always been there. It's just more hype and accelerated right now, right? But what we're seeing, pretty much as far as the data loss explanation, many schools are actually operating, in a highly collaborative cloud-based ecosystem now, where files are constantly being shared, duplicated, downloaded, and they're accessed across devices, whether it's Mac, PC, Chromebooks. and platforms. And so without proper governance and visibility, we're seeing, districts can actually face serious risk. We're seeing, actually not only risk, but crashes. The system actually crashes depending on the district. Because everything has gone cloud-based. The standard ecosystem for school districts today are cloud-based ecosystems, right? So we're seeing that districts can face serious risk, related to sensitive student information. Law 2D came out recently, right? So we're seeing a lot of implementation, staff records, testing materials, right? Financial documents, confidential communication being exposed unintentionally. So we're seeing unintentional accidents happen. You see, before the ecosystem really came to market and everything was kind of broken into sections and more manageable, the biggest problem we saw when technology started to evolve was mistaken students accidentally casting into another room. That has accelerated to the point where they block that off. Now you're seeing data loss taking place because it's not really intentional, it's actually accidental. And so, AI tools are accelerating productivity, but they're also increasing the speed at which information moves throughout an organization. Which, hence needs that the challenge, isn't stopping innovation. The challenge is really implementing innovation responsibly.
Yeah, well, the responsibility part is extremely important because if there's no planned approach, if there's no built-in sort of checks and balances to make sure that, things are being done securely, things are being done in a responsible way, it can have long-lasting effects. That can be a really horrible situation after having spent a lot of money and time to do something if it wasn't planned out properly, From the system administrator's point, or from the person managing the tech department, right? If you think that maybe they feel like things are a little bit out of control, or they don't have a handle on things, or from your experience in working with the different schools you work with, what's the first thing you think these guys should be taking a look at? In other words, like, if we're going to start implementing and doing things properly, we need to start somewhere, right? We've sort of let the systems run on their own, and that's not a negative comment on anybody. People are doing their jobs and so forth, but we're going to do things a little bit differently now. We're going to try to bring this all together and reel things in. Where do you think they need to start? What's the thing that your people need to look at first when they're talking about doing some sort of an audit or something like that?
Great question, right? First, look at the AI, right? I'm not sure if I should say this before, but safe adoption requires clear policies, okay? Staff training, visibility tools, governance, framework, and ongoing monitoring. So the goal should never be to avoid innovation. It should be to implement innovation intelligently and responsibly. So if we were looking at, how to prepare, what should schools do to kind of like prepare for that audit, that's really an excellent leadership and governance question. So I think that would focus under that umbrella, we would see proactive governance, right? Documentations, visibility, policies, automation, all those wonderful things. Because quite honestly, the biggest mistake that a lot of schools do, or should I say one of the most commonly missing during audits would be, one of the biggest gaps, I should say, one of the biggest gaps is often visibility, right? Into permissions, file sharing, and user behavior over time. Many districts also struggle. I was in a recent meeting in Connecticut, and they informed me that they struggle with documentation consistency, inactive accounts. That's huge.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how many teachers, the shifting, right? Excessive administrative access. Wow. I said, really? And it's because they're so busy, Scott. They're so busy, and understanding how data is moving across their environment. There's really not a good understanding. You think there would be, but they have so much on their plate. So that's a common miss. If they're doing an audit. So I would strongly advise best practices to start off. Establish clear governance policies, right? Define what's going to be acceptable. What are we going to share? What are the retention policies, right? Review user access, maintain visibility, automate your reporting. And that's going to actually eliminate a lot of the human errors that take place. Train staff continuously, just like there's training and PD done on the technology to help educators maximize the use of it. There needs to be training continuously done on, the best practices for the cybersecurity. Document everything. There used to be a saying in New York, you see something, say something. You got to document everything, right? Because policies, procedures, approvals, remediation efforts, they should all be clearly documented. And last, I probably would say monitor, and this, you touched upon that, right? Monitor third-party integration. Schools often overlook risk associated with, connected applications and external platforms. And it's the connected applications. How many apps do you have on your phone, right? So you could imagine, the connected applications that take place in a school. There's no way in the world they can monitor that by themselves. So it's an overlook. There's a risk.
Yeah. Again, that's where we go back to these, add-on tools that give people that added ability to get the granular information about what's taking place in their environment, because, it's about the behavior too. And if you can't see the behavior that's taking place in your environment, then you can't secure the data, right? So that's the bottom line. You have to know what's going on in your place. Listen, Dwayne, thanks for your time today. I really do appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to speak with you and good to see you again. If you want to connect with Dwayne, reach out on LinkedIn, or to see what they are building over at PC University, head over to pcuniversity.com. For those of you listening on Apple or Spotify, please follow the show. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next episode. And again, Dwayne, appreciate you stopping by today. We'll see you all next time. Remember, if you can't see the risk, you can't manage the innovation.
Thank you, Scott.